Ryan. I am the managing editor of the Blue Rose magazine and the author of Always Music in the Air, and we're going to do a little Q&A here with the editor of the film, Duwayne Dunham, and the DP, Fred Elmes. I know, very exciting. And then after the Q&A, I interviewed Duwayne for my book, Always Music in the Air, and Duwayne has said he will sign some copies, so if you would like to get Duwayne's autograph and a book, you can. Come on up, Fred and Duwayne. I have a couple announcements to make while they make their way. First of all, did anyone get proposed to anyone tonight? Anyone? In front of the theater? Right? Right back there, go ahead and stand up. We had a proposal that happened out front. What I want to know is, did he sing Love Me Tender to you? Or just like said, will you marry me or something? So the music box is going to pay for your wedding. Oh, that's not happening? Oh, that's not happening. And we also want to remind you on Thursday, George Griffith, who was in The Return, he is screening his movie From the Head. And he texted me a little secret. The first 50 people get a That Fucker Ray badge. So you don't want to miss that. So I think I made my announcements. Have a seat. We have Fred Elmes, the DP, and Duwayne Dunham. So I love when you guys get to see the film. So I'm going to start for both of you. What did you notice tonight that you never noticed before? Right, I know, isn't that cool that they put that there? They want to see how, which one of you would fight for it.
I'm going to get it.
What did you each notice that you hadn't noticed before? Fred?
I really fell in love with Laura Dern's performance again. It was so special when we did it, and it stuck in my head, and I haven't seen it in a while, and there she was, and I just was so entranced watching her. And I've worked with her since we made this movie. I worked with her just a few years ago on a film, and she's equally driven as an actor today.
Well, and this was a major step forward for Laura Dern. She wasn't the Laura Dern that she is now. And she's so sexual and so alive on screen. I think it's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Well, she's every bit as alive today. I mean, she's so...
Well, we didn't say she passed. I mean, we know. I wasn't saying that. Duwayne, what did you notice?
Not just because I'm sitting next to Fred, but boy, the cinematography is just beautiful on that. It's not every movie that you get to work with these wonderful images, and especially in a wide screen. There's that shot, Isabella, it's in the doorway of that crazy house out in the desert. And it's 235, it's a big wide screen, and she's there and her hand is up, it's gorgeous. And the next cut is that house, her, and the car. And it's the same wide frame, but it's the way that it's framed makes all the difference. And then you can't stop thinking about David. And David's such a special filmmaker that I remember throwing the script across the room one day saying, what is this? Seriously. But David is the kind of guy that he'll take that idea and he'll run with it. And you see it from the script to the shooting to the cutting. That isn't anything like the original script. I mean, it is and it isn't.
But it was all rearranged. Right, completely out of order in this version, in the film cut, than it was written in the script.
Oddly enough, when the first cut, 4 hours and 27 minutes long, it didn't work. No, I'm being honest. And David knew it. We both knew it. It did not work. And so, what do you do? And you know, we messed around, and then you know, I use index cards and put them up on the board. And David said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "I've got an idea. Let me show you." And it's easier to move the cards than it is to put the reels up and rearrange. It would take you weeks. And we both stood up, and David pulled his cap down tight and his jacket around his shoulders, and he says, "All right, show me." And that first scene where Bob Lemon gets killed, that was like scene 75 or 78. That is the scene that threw us into Act 3. So we almost constructed the movie from the back, but had to make sense of all that. So that editorial style came out of how we arranged the picture and took 2 scenes, sometimes 3 scenes, dialogue, and combined it into one to tell the story.
And how does that affect your work, Fred? Because you know, you're lighting things, you're capturing them in a certain way, and now they go in the editing room and they jumble it up.
Yeah, that's a killer. But what they did in the editing room was really establish a whole new style, which really repaced the film. And it made it these fragments that weren't there in the original script, and the fragments actually worked very well together. So I mean, I think they succeeded completely.
What was it like to see it? Because you didn't think it was gonna come out that way, and you go see.
No, it was a complete surprise when I saw the screening. You know, the final cut screening. It was a complete surprise, and no, it was pleasant. I mean, it was a pleasant surprise. But because it made sense. It made perfect sense.
Well, no, Fred's right. I mean, this is a vast departure from the original script and the original cut. This was an odd one. This was an odd one. The sound effects. See, that soundscape in this is another character. And it really helps to tell the story in this.
And that's something that wasn't in the script. It couldn't be in the script.
All the matches and a lot of the Wizard of Oz references, you know, David was just kind of adding that as the movie went along. And
as the filming went along, or as the editing went along?
As the filming went
along, because we did shoot more or less in order. Certainly the last scenes of Nick and Laura together were all the last things we shot. So that whole conclusion, their drama, was the last, and we added the Good Witch.
Yeah, all the crystal ball, and that's all, all made up, just trying to figure out how do we stitch this whole thing together. But I'll tell you, we mixed up at Skywalker Ranch, and working with David, I was still editing the movie, by the way, and he started the mix. And he called me and said, okay, we're gonna play back reel 1. I go in the mixing room and we play back reel 1, which is 10 minutes of movie. And I'm like speechless, like, huh? I mean, what? No, that is so unusual. And David was there with his synthesizers and all kinds of noise making. He was actually doing sound effects live in the mix. And then he called me on reel 2, and it was, huh? And reel 3, And then reel 4, I went back to my cutting room. I said, I better get going because they're gonna catch me. And it was reel 4 where I realized this is where David was going. And it's so unusual and wonderful to work with a filmmaker who's so brave that he will go out on a limb. And I can't, Fred, you know this, from day one, every movie David ever made was this guy should be put in jail, given another camera, all this crazy nonsense. And this was no different, by the way. Right. And so, they came to me late at night and said, okay, we're ready for the last reel. And I said, I'm not done. And they said, well, we're ready for the last reel. And so I broke it in half. I said, okay, here's the first 5 minutes. You guys go start mixing and I'll finish cutting the reel. And that's how it went.
No, there was a big deadline because we were going to go to the Cannes Film Festival, and getting it out the door, getting all the post-production laboratory stuff done in time was difficult. And I remember you went ahead and I came last to France, and I brought the last reel with me in my suitcase because I was the last one to get it out of the laboratory.
Did Southwest charge you for that? Just put it up
and this is the truth. Usually you want to screen the movie. We did screen this movie twice, by the way, early. And we learned a big lesson. And the lesson is, you know, film is an emotional medium, and if you can make somebody feel something, whatever that feeling is, you've really succeeded. However it is, through the photography or through whatever, the music certainly helps. We had a screening of the Cary Grant Theater at MGM one night, 300 people. At a certain moment, 70 minutes into the movie, 70 minutes, in an instant, 125 people jumped up and ran out of the theater. They didn't walk, they ran. And we were stunned. What is this? And so you can imagine the studio afterwards. You have to deal with them. And we made the argument that they had recruited a Disney crowd. And this is a David Lynch movie. It requires a David Lynch crowd. So they kind of gave us that look, and okay, 2 nights later, back in the Cary Grant Theater, another 300 people, and I'll be darned, the same moment, boom, bang, 125, 130 people ran from the theater, but those that were left turned violent on the movie. I've never, ever seen this, ever. They were yelling things, the same kind of things we heard on Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks, and whatever else. You know, we offended them. And what we had done is we pushed our audience to the edge of the cliff, and it's okay, the toes go over, but don't push them off the ledge. The audience doesn't care for that.
And that scene, of course, was Grace Zabriskie torturing Harry Dean Stanton.
Yes.
And I've never seen that scene. Now, there is a deleted scene that came out in the line box, but I don't think it's everything.
I doubt
mean, what
you.
did you do with that scene, Duwayne? Is it in your house and you've got it up in the closet?
No,
You're waiting to show it? Because we want to see it. We want to get angry and storm out of here.
I know. It's unfortunate. We work so hard, there's so little time, and you're trying to make everything as good as it can. Wouldn't you like to have all the stuff that you've ever shot or worked on, and you know, all the cuts, whatever it was? You just don't have time, you don't think about it. That was a simple trim. And I'll tell you something about this movie. Here's the weird thing. David came in with Monty Montgomery, who Monty was going to shoot this movie. It was Monty's movie. David came in the cutting room. We were finishing cutting the pilot episode of Twin Peaks. He says, I'm going to direct Wild at Heart, and I want you to cut it. I said, I can't cut it. I'm going to have another job. We go back and forth, back and forth. And I said, okay, David, this is the end of May. He says, I said, when are you going to shoot this thing? July. Do you have a script? No. Well, when are you going to have a script? He says, that's not a problem. This thing will write itself. and so when did you start? You started, what, shooting in July?
The end of July.
Okay. So we finished Twin Peaks and the pilot, and we didn't know that we would get picked up. As a matter of fact, when David called me to say, let's go make Twin Peaks, he said, ABC is giving us $4 or $5 million. Let's go make a movie. They'll never air this thing. Let's just go have some fun and make a movie. So anyway, that's kind of where we went with
In
this.
all of David Lynch's films, my favorite shot ever is in Wild at Heart. And I want to ask you about it, Fred. I think it's the most beautiful scene in any Lynch film, and it's when Lula cannot get a song on the radio. And Nicolas Cage flips out and they dance crazily.
My favorite-
but then
my
it
favorite
comes
scene
around.
too.
How did you get that sunset? It's perfect, and it's right in between them. It is glorious. What can you tell me about that
Not by
scene?
accident.
Well, it's not how you do it. I mean,
Planning.
tell me about that plan and
No,
what
we
you
planned.
did to
We planned
capture it. It's beautiful.
We planned it. We knew the road, the stretch of road in Texas that we wanted to be on. We knew that we needed the crane that day, and there's only a couple of crane shots in the movie, and that was going to be one of them. So we had to get the crane out to Texas. We lined it up. We knew where the sun was going to set. At
How
one
do you know
time.
that? How do you know where the sun's going to set?
Compass.
Okay.
I'll tell you
Does
what
anyone
was
have
hard.
a compass? I don't have a compass. If someone asked me where the
hard
sun was
part
going to
was
set,
getting the movie company done with the afternoon scene to the sunset scene in time to make it to the
do
sun.
you practice the day before because you know the sun will be in about the same spot, or no?
No, you practice as soon as you get there.
It's just
keep your
beautiful.
fingers crossed. It's my favorite. It is my favorite scene. It's my favorite build. It plays off of where the characters are and their frustration with life and their situation and being chased and the good guys and the bad guys and all that. And it is a moment where the movie steps back and takes a breath.
Right.
And so we knew when the crane went up in the air that the music would swell. I mean, you could sort of feel it all coming. But just planning ahead to get those takes. Nick did that 3 times. The handspring off the car. That was it for him. He was done.
Well, I would think you don't have a lot of minutes because the sunset happens fast.
Pretty quick.
Duwayne, when you get footage like that, there's not a lot of editing. It almost seems like it's one take. What's it like to be in there? Do you know it's coming, and are you like, my God, this is beautiful? What is it your side of that scene?
I
It's
didn't
beautiful.
particularly care for it, Fred. There was nothing to cut.
My point exactly.
Can I say, this is how wild this movie was, and bear with me, Fred, because you come in. David went off to start shooting Wild at Heart. Then I started cutting Wild at Heart. I was going to direct the first episode of Twin Peaks because we got picked up. I shot for 7 days on the first episode of Twin Peaks. I finished shooting on the same day David and Fred finished shooting the feature Wild at Heart. David came back to the cutting room and we sort of looked around and we said, okay, well, we got Twin Peaks and we got Wild at Heart here. We've got a lot going on. And David then took off and he didn't direct. He directed the second episode, but out of order. 3 happened after 1 and then 2. And anyways, then we came back in, and as I said, this movie was not working. And David said one day, he said, can we take this movie to Cannes? This is probably October. I said, when's Cannes? He says, May. I said, what day in May? And he said, well, about a week. And I said, David, if you can get the very last slot in the very last day, yes, we can make it, but we cannot go backwards. When we make a decision, we have to keep moving forward. There's no going back on this one. So everything you see up here, which is so wonderful, that's a gamble. Because we're cutting away, shooting away on Twin Peaks, we're cutting away on Wild at Heart, and then we go up to Skywalker to mix this thing. Mix it, get it, and cut it, still cut. And like midnight, David finished the mix, and so we're gonna do a playback in George's Stag Theater, you know, state of the art, Mr. Technology, everything. And we put Wild at Heart in there about midnight 30. And those cell doors came in the beginning with the title, blew the speakers out. And I said, David, should we keep going? He says, yeah, it's all right. Just keep going. And so we watched the movie, but that finished probably 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning. At 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock, we were on a plane back to LA to look at the first answer print. First answer print, and Fred comes in, we go over to Todd A.O., and we brought a copy of the master mix with us. And we went to run the first answer print, because mind you, this is Tuesday. Saturday night, we premiere at Cannes, and we've never screened this movie. And we're at Todd A.O., and the dupe of the master mix has dropouts in it. So, oh my God, what are we gonna do? So we have the guys from Skywalker ship us the final, the master mix bag tape. David and I got on an airplane, hand carrying the first answer print and the master mix. We go to Paris, we start the subtitling. Fred's to come along later with the next answer print. Thursday morning, we finish our subtitling in Paris. Friday morning, we fly to Cannes, and I'm in the cutting room at Cannes, cutting the last shots into this movie. And they give you 20 minutes sound and picture test at the Palais.
I remember that, yeah.
And our slot was midnight. And so we finished doing what we had to do in the cutting room. Then we went to a nice party on David Bowie's yacht, which was a nice and the little rowboat came out to get us a little before midnight, and we go back to the Palais, and I said to the projectionist, I said, you know, you're not gonna probably believe this, but we've never seen this movie. Never seen this movie, never heard this track. And the guy's looking at me like, and David says, he's right, you know. And David says, look, I'll tell you what, if you dig the movie, could you just let it go? Because we really love to see it. If you don't dig the movie, just give us our 20 minutes and it'll be good. That must have been 3:30 in the morning. We're walking back to the hotel saying, damn, what a nice, good movie that is. 7 o'clock that night, we were with, 3,000 people in the Palais.
And Fred, what happened at the Cannes Film Festival to Wild at Heart?
It made it.
It won. It won the Palme d'Or. I mean, last night I asked you, what did Eraserhead do for your career? And you said, not much for a while. What did winning, does it help a cinematographer to win at Cannes? Did it help? Did it not?
It helps a little bit, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. No, it was wonderful to be part of it. It was really completely amazing, completely surprising, and yeah, it was just a wonderful experience to be there.
We're all hurting because David isn't here, even though he's here in spirit, and it's rough. Fred and I talked a little bit about this last night. I'm gonna give it to you, Duwayne, to help us out. What would David want us to do and feel about his work now? How do you think, because now it has a beginning, middle, and end, his career. How are you viewing his work with him passing?
Well, I don't know. That's hard to say. I haven't seen this movie in a while. I've seen pieces of it because there's certain scenes I enjoy looking at, because David has this unique ability to cast a spell. And very few movies, very few filmmakers can succeed with that. And I just marveled at watching this tonight, how beautiful just everything was, the shots, the composition, and knowing that David is behind every bit of it, and how would he want us to view his work the same as when he was with us? I don't know. What's it mean for you? He's never going to tell you what he thinks it means.
Well, there is this thing that happens, when the audience sees a film, and it's a little electricity. It's a little. The movie gives something to the audience, and
it's always
the
different.
audience shares amongst themselves. In that performance, it feels a little different than it did the week before. So there's that magic thing that happens seeing a movie all together.
Fred, tell me about shooting Cheryl Lee as the Good Witch. What do you remember about that shoot? That was the second day with the crane, and you said, let's put Laura Palmer up there.
That's right. No, it was wonderful. David had said, so Fred, we have to come up with something special because when the Good Witch comes on, it feels like things vibrate. It feels like we're going to put a bubble around her and make her really pretend. But what else can we do? And I'd always wanted to try this trick where you put a polarizing filter on the lens and spin it around in order to make the sky go light and dark and light and dark. And I thought this might work in this situation, but there was no way to do it. There was no mechanical device to do that. So I had the folks at Panavision build this little rig where the filter would spin really, really fast because of the motor on it. And we got it to the set that day, and it worked strangely. It's like it was the first one-off surprise thing, but we managed to make that shot of her descending, just a little bit special.
And they call that the Elmes
Yes,
lens,
they do.
right?
Now they do.
You patented and made $1 million. Thank you guys for coming out tonight and sharing this with us and your work with David. You guys are going to be here tomorrow for Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
So we will get Blue Velvet stories, which is very exciting. And like I said, I interviewed Duwayne in my Always Music in the Air book. He told a little bit. We go through David Lynch's life in 1989, and Duwayne helped me piece it, and he'll sign the interview if you're interested. But otherwise, enjoy The Hidden, which comes up at midnight. And thank you both.